We're talking to Jacob Morgan, who wrote a book about the collaborative organization. You talk about how employees can better work together in the future.
Yes.
Tell me about it.
So the whole point of the book is basically talking about collaboration and the future of work. And what's happening is a lot of organizations are starting to realize that it's important to start to connect and engage employees. And we do this in our personal lives all the time with things like Twitter and Facebook and LinkedIn, and we use Google to find information. But inside of our companies, it's very hard to do that. It's very hard for us to find information, to build communities, to find subject matter experts, to find content. So the collaborative organization is all around how do we take a lot of the things that we're used to in our personal lives and start to bring that inside of our organizations.
So how do I do that?
Well, you got to read the book, the 314 pages. But
I'm looking at this video of 3 minutes.
Well, all organizations have to start at some point, and that's actually the exact question that somebody asked me during the session. And
where do I start?
Yes,
yeah.
she said, where do we start? And I basically told her the first thing that you need to find out is what other organizations are doing. Because if you don't know what this means to your company.
Just be inspired by other companies.
Exactly. So you need to just, get a sense of what other companies are doing. Start learning about some of the technologies that are out there, and just read some case studies and some research reports around what companies are doing. I mean, the book has a lot of that, but there's a lot of stuff online. This is an industry.
So I read a lot about flexible offices.
Exactly. I mean, this is an industry that's been around for a couple of years now. So there's a lot of stuff out there. So if you just Google things like collaboration case studies, Enterprise 2.0 case studies, you'll start to find what other companies are doing, and you can start to look at that and say, oh, that's a really cool idea. Maybe we should apply that within our company.
So, for instance, do you think people should be able to work at home, work anywhere?
Yes.
Because there's different opinions.
Yes. So
because we also need to chat with each other in live. Some people say.
Yep. So I have a new book coming out in September that's called The Future of Work. That's going to be coming out September of this year, and that's one of the big themes that I talk about. And you're absolutely right. I mean, flexible work is important, but I think the key distinction is that you're not forcing employees to come into the office. You're not forcing them to work from home. You give them a choice. So it's not that you're telling employees you have to come into the office or you have to work from home. You just tell employees you have the option.
Yeah.
If you don't want to come into the office and drive an hour
Make
and a
it
half.
flexible.
Exactly. I mean, that's
and then
what
some companies
work
say
is.
We work in the office at Monday.
Exactly. A lot of organizations say, work from home 2 days, come into the office 3 days, or come in for a couple hours and whatnot. Flexible work that's what it means. It's flexibility. It's having the option to come in when you need to work from home when you need to. If you have to take your kid to school, or if you have an appointment that you need to get to, or maybe you just don't want to drive an hour each way to get to work, if you have internet connection at home, you could do the same job.
And is there then tools that are really handy? What kind of tools?
There's tons of collaboration tools out there. I mean, just to name a couple of them, there's Yammer, there's Jive, there's Chatter, there's GoToMeeting, there's Citrix, there's Mango apps, there's task management solutions. There's hundreds of applications and tools out there. And they all emulate the same experience that we're used to in our personal lives through Twitter and Facebook and stuff like that. So the technologies are there. It's not a question about the technology. They've been around for a couple of years already. I think the big challenge that organizations have is wrapping their minds around being able to make that shift within a company. You look at an organization that is so used to having everybody show up to work, suit and tie, sit in a cubicle. It's very hard for them to all of a sudden say, hey, you know what? You can work from home if you want to. You guys don't need to come into the office today.
So let's say my management is, I have a very nice company, but I work for a very nice company. My management is opposed to this idea. How do I talk to them?
You switch
I give
jobs.
them your book.
You quit the job and go
switch jobs.
No, that's a good question. It's a common one, right? How do we...
I want to, but my boss doesn't.
Exactly. How do we build the case to show it to managers and whatnot? There are a couple things. First is understand what some of the problems that your manager is faced with. Maybe your manager finds it difficult to deal with accountability or with alignment or something like that. So show him how doing these types of things is going to make the manager's job easier. Hey, I may not come into the office, but I'm going to be more productive. I'll be able to do work for you better. You can still communicate and collaborate with me through these technologies. You can see the work that I'm doing more effectively because it's all going to be, in this collaboration environment. So you try to understand, why don't they want you to do it, and try to address the challenges or the pain points that they have. I think that's one of them. A second issue, you're always going to run into managers that are just kind of like, no, I don't care. That's just how I am. It's never going to happen. And that's the reality within some companies. You just have those types of managers that just, regardless of what you do, they want things done their certain way. At that point, it's up to a personal choice if you want to keep working for that type of a person. I think that for the future organization, those types of managers are going to disappear because people just don't want to work for those types of people. I think the future manager has to be one that is willing to challenge conventional management ideas.
Yeah, but that's going to take a long time because you say the technologies are there for a couple of years, but the manager's going to be there for 20 years more.
Well, the notion of trying to change that idea, I think will take a couple years, but we're already seeing it in a lot of organizations. I mean, most companies that we talk to today, they already have managers that are starting to ask themselves, why do we have employee reviews every year? Why do our employees have to commute an hour and a half each way to work? Like, they're starting to ask these questions. And when they ask those questions, they're forced to come up with a reason. You know, does that even make sense anymore? It doesn't really make sense. So we're starting to see that happen within a lot of organizations. And I think within the next 2 to 5 years, it's going to become the standard. I find it very hard to imagine within 5-10 years' time that anybody's going to want to work for an organization or for a manager that is not changing and evolving the way they work.
And how do I see if I'm more productive that way?
How do you see if you're more productive that way?
Yeah, how do I see if I'm doing the right thing?
Well, there are a couple ways. Well, first you have to look at how you currently are evaluated based on productivity, today. Most organizations and most managers, they look at productivity based on how many hours you sit in a chair at work. Did you come in at 8 o'clock? You left at 7 o'clock? Great. That's how many hours you spent. That's fantastic. But the reality is that how many hours you spend on something doesn't mean anything. I mean, I could do the same task in 2 hours as you could in 10. Just because you spent 10 hours doing it doesn't mean that you're more productive. So organizations and managers need to spend more time focusing on the type of work that's produced, the quality of the work, how long it took to get produced, etc., instead of focusing on how many hours somebody's just sitting in a chair. It's a results-oriented workplace. It's focusing on the outputs that employees create instead of the inputs that are going into it. So what did you make instead of how long did it take you to make it, or how many hours did you spend sitting in a chair? I think that type of a mentality is going to be very important.
What's the last tip you give to the Emerce readers?
Oh, last tip. Just try it out. Just start testing things out when it comes to collaboration in the future of work. I think the biggest thing that all organizations, managers, employees, anybody could do is just start asking why more often. Why are things the way they are? And do they really make sense to be the way they are within your company? If not, what can you do differently?
Great, thanks.